Welcome to the Gaming of Performance Podcast, episode 24. On this episode of the podcast, I get to talk with Dr. Tyrel Detweiler of Hybrid Performance Co. Dr. Detweiler is well-versed in strength and conditioning and has a rich background in it. We get into how RPR has changed his outlook as a chiropractor, how strength and conditioning has influenced his chiropractic practice, and how he became a writer for Elite FDS. This is another episode that you're not going to want to miss. So without further ado, here is Dr. Tyrel Detweiler.
Dr. Detweiler, thank you so much for your time today. Really looking forward to talking with you. For the listeners at home, will you tell us just a little bit about your background, your motivation, and where you are currently?
Yeah, so I am actually a doctor of chiropractic, and a lot of my experiences in chiropractic or what I do in my realm as a healthcare provider has a lot to do with my athletics involvement. Mm-hmm. So I kind of have to start there to get a little more of a view of what I do and how I do it. So I mean, I've been involved in athletics obviously since high school, like a lot of people. But a lot of my experiences have been in football and then kind of the strength sports, which has directed me in a certain direction, obviously. So I started out. I played football in high school. And then went on to the University of Iowa and was an offensive guard there from 2007 to 2010. And then kind of from that point in my life decided, what I wanted to actually do with my career. Obviously, the NFL wasn't a circumstance at that point. So, at that point, it was kind of a little bit of a trying to find myself period. My parents had always pushed me to consider being a chiropractor in my athletics career. Like, as an athlete, the one thing that always seemed to have an effect and be able to help me and perform better for me was chiropractic. So I've been going to a chiropractor since I was, probably 7-8 years old with like earaches and stuff like that. And that was always a thing that helped me out. And then as an athlete, always found success with chiropractic as an athlete. So at that point, that was something, the big gap that I thought I was missing as an athlete at Iowa was we didn't have a chiropractor there. Every time I wanted to do that or see that, I had to go seek that person out for myself. Luckily I was within a good 20 minutes of that guy that I'd seen as a kid, so it was easy for me to get there. But so that kind of got me thinking. I was reflecting during that period of what I wanted to do with my life, and I thought it'd be really cool. Like, hey, I've seen success as an athlete in chiropractic, and wouldn't it be awesome if we could have more chiropractors be able to be affecting athletes and be able to help athletes out? So that's kind of where I decided to go with my career. And at that point too, the other passion I have in my life would be with the strength sports and lifting. So at that point, when I was a high schooler, I was just your typical, fat, out of shape, 7th or 8th grader.
Okay.
I think, I'm trying to think back. I think when I was in 7th grade, I weighed like 280 or 290 pounds. And then during my 8th grade year, I kind of got more into like diet and exercise. Everyone talk about like the ketogenic diet and all this shit.
Yeah.
I was doing Atkins back when I was in 8th grade. Dropped 50 pounds, and started like being able to actually perform in football. So that was kind of the one side where I started realizing like, hey, like the way I treat my body is gonna affect me. So then the other part of that was like my introduction to the world of strength. I didn't really lift a whole lot when I was younger. Didn't even really enjoy it, and then kind of fell into a situation where a family member recommended a strength coach up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is about 35 minutes away from where I grew up, and said like, hey man, this guy will make you better. He'll make you stronger. He'll make you a better athlete. So at that point, like, I started going to him. His name is Ken McClellan up at the Anvil Gym.
Okay.
And I went, like, I drove, or my parents drove me 3 times a week for a total of like an hour and 10 minutes. To just be able to go up and train and get stronger, get out of a 3-car garage, like super underground strength.
Yeah.
And so that was like once I actually got to the point where I was good enough to get into the D1 level. I mean, I recognized that was the reason for it. So I really, and then with Coach Doyle being there at Iowa, I really just fell in love with strength. And so once I kind of got out of college football and didn't really have a whole lot of purpose, I gained a bunch of weight. I was probably up to, playing weight was right around like 300 to 310. I got up to like 330. Obviously decided I need to make some sort of change, figure something out. And at that point, ironically enough, like I turned to powerlifting to help lose weight and, and gain some direction. So I started powerlifting in 2011. And then that kind of carried me over until about 2012, I believe, when I decided to attend chiropractic school in St. Louis, Missouri at Logan University. And at that point, I moved down to St. Louis from Iowa. I had never left the state of Iowa my entire life, so that was a big move for me too. But the reason I moved down there was because they had a program at Logan University that had a lot to do with sports and sports rehab, and specifically they had a relationship with the University of Missouri in Columbia. So like at that point, I was like, that's where I got to go. So I went down to chiropractic school. Honestly, had no clue what chiropractic was about, even though I had been a patient for how long, until I got to school. And once I got there, I realized it was everything like I kind of innately believed in, or like knew. I kind of knew those things, but I didn't have it explained to me, or didn't have like the concept of taking care of your body and all those things like actually brought to the forefront. And I just realized that a lot of the stuff that was going on, it was more than just the chiropractic that was taught. It was just more about that lifestyle and taking care of your body, being performance driven. So I fell in love with that process of learning in that realm of healthcare and education and all that. So that was a really big factor for me. So at that point, I went through school at Logan and eventually continued to work towards the collegiate sports atmosphere. So in 2014, the fall of 2014, I just started driving up to the University of Missouri twice a week, about an hour and a half drive. So I drove there twice a week during my free time in school and helped out as an intern at the University of Missouri on the sports medicine team. We had a Logan doc that was up there, so it was kind of those things. You come in, and because I was at the level where I could treat and help, like I got to get my hands on athletes, got to get into that atmosphere again, kind of a different perspective being an athlete first and now being that healthcare role. So that was really great, and that led to a full-time internship for the entire spring of 2015. And then after that led me on a search to kind of figure out where I can, once I got done with school, like where I can start helping out and just find a position with colleges. So and I think like as you probably understand this too, like once you're in that realm, once you're involved with collegiate sports, the network just opens up. So
100%.
Everyone kind of knows everyone. It's a small world. Like I know so and so from over here, or he was with me back then when we were over at this place. So at that point when I was looking at where I wanted to practice, we followed some connections and had a couple different options. It was actually between moving out to Boise to try to take a chance at Boise State, or moving down to Memphis to get involved with the University of Memphis there in their sports med program. And the funniest thing is, like, if you would have asked me even 6 months before I made that decision, like where's the one place in the United States you would not want to go to, period, and I would have said the South.
Hey, I'm in the same boat, so
So, at that point, like, I kind of weighed out the options. I visited both Boise and Memphis, and even it was funny because my experience in Memphis was decent, but I love Boise. Like, I mean, I'm all about the mountains and stuff. So I was at that point where, as I was leaving Memphis, I was like, man, I think Boise. I think it's Boise. I think it's Boise State. And as I was leaving Memphis, I was about to take the turn to head across the river, to head across the Mississippi, and go back to Iowa. And So at this point, backing up a little bit, I had gotten into strongman pretty heavily once I moved to Logan.
Okay.
We actually had a relationship with the president of the United States Strongman Corporation, Willie Wessels, that I had kind of worked into and developed. We held a competition there. I hosted a strongman competition there that he helped out a lot with, and so I built a good relationship with him to where I actually, in 2015, I actually worked at the first USS Nationals up in Indianapolis. So, just kind of following that strength realm actually led me to a couple of interesting things, because one of the athletes that I worked on at Nationals in 2015 was a general manager for a gym in Memphis, MBS Fitness. So Andy Gunshow, if anyone knows who she is, she's pretty prominent in the strongman realm as a promoter. She puts on a great bunch of shows in Memphis. But so as I was going to take that left turn, I actually took the left turn, right? Or it's one of those clovers where you kind of go off to the right, but it swings you back around to the left. And I was like, you know what? Like, I knew that gym was there in Memphis, and I was like, well, maybe if for some reason I decide that, like, hey, I'm going to actually move here, like, I probably should at least know where I'm going to train. So, even though I was like, man, it's not going to happen. And I knew that the owner of that gym and then one of the other athletes, like, they all had a really good relationship with the FTS, which we'll get to later. But so I was like, you know what? Like, I'm leaving a day early. Like, I might as well go check it out, right? So as I was happening on that clover, I decided right then, to just get right back on the on-ramp. So you're taking you're exiting, you're going around the clover, and then there's another right as soon as you're getting into it, the traffic merges, and you go back up. So I did a quick U-turn on that on-ramp and went over and checked out MBS Fitness. And I walked into the gym, and Annie's the first person I see. And I was like, hey, I'm Tyrel Detweiler. Like, I don't know if you remember me or not, but I actually worked on you at Nationals. And instantly, like, her eyes lit up, and she's like, holy shit, you need to come and work for us here. We need a chiropractor. So it's just like, that strength community has always kind of been a huge deciding factor in my life. And at that point, like, we took a tour of the gym. I talked to the owner, David Allen. Like, we kind of got to know each other for a little bit, and I was like, well, you know what? Like, I've always wanted to have a practice inside of the gym. Like, maybe Memphis is swinging the other way for me. So that's kind of what ended up happening. So I ended up deciding to go to Memphis. And for 3 years, I was the team chiropractor for University of Memphis Athletics. Worked a couple practices there. One of them being in a gym space out of MBS Fitness. And then just as life continues to progress and move on, this last summer I decided to make the trip and take a change of pace and move to Columbus, Ohio. And open up a practice with a physical therapist. So we're in a partnership, and the business is called Hybrid Performance Group. And we're located kind of like in an adjacent space. Again, same kind of concept, a medical facility inside or connecting to a gym. So we're in a space that's connected to J.L. Holdsworth's the Spot Athletics there in Grandview Heights in Columbus.
Awesome.
So that's kind of where I moved from that. And then I also do some continuing ed teaching, which I'm sure we'll get into here later for Reflexive Performance Reset. I mean, that's how we met. And then just recently I started working as a columnist with the FTS as well. So that's kind of my background, and that's why honestly I'm really happy that you reached out to me, man, because like I've always had a passion for the strength sports, and so anything I do is usually geared towards that. So any opportunity to kind of help talk about and progress that profession is always something that's high up on my list.
No, awesome, and that's quite the journey. I think there's going to be a lot of cool topics we can dive into, right? But before we get to that, will you just tell us a little bit about the business you co-own and kind of what your approach to chiropractic work is?
So kind of like I said before, like I'm the co-owner of Hybrid Performance Group. So you can kind of tell where we're going with the business and the name, actually, and that's kind of one of the biggest reasons why we love that name. Is, you know, first and foremost, it's a hybrid approach, right? It's not just chiropractic, it's not just PT. We feel like there's a huge opportunity that those two professions need to be working better together. And typically they're kind of at each other's throats. And I think for petty reasons, I don't think there's a whole lot of reason for it, because most chiropractors and most PTs that are good do a little bit of the same thing.
Okay.
So I actually met my partner, Debbie Sresadata. She just got married, so I can now say her new last name, which is Edwards.
Okay.
But, so, you know, we met at an RPR seminar. We met at the first RPR seminar, and just from there, kind of just kept in touch. And so eventually, when that topic came up of moving to Columbus, me and her were kind of on the same page of what we wanted to do, which is basically be a practice that is performance based, that we're more concerned about results than worried about pain or worried about dysfunction or waiting until you get in having an injury to address that and try to do something about it. You know, and I think as that business grows, as we continue to grow here, we've only been open for a few months now. Eventually, like, I think we want to grow to where that hybrid concept of having multiple different approaches, multiple professionals, where we just keep growing. We add more like-minded professionals that can get the job done and actually more focus on keeping the body healthy and promoting more of a proactive, you know, outlook on health and performance, you know, in an athlete or in a general population, rather than being like, all right, well, you know, come back to me when you're hurt. Or your work, you know, our work is done here now. I don't need to work with you anymore moving forward. You know, just kind of keeping that relationship up. So so part of that is we also actually, through my experience with the Division I setting, we also have an entire room that's set up kind of like an athletic training room. You guys probably have the same thing at, you know, App State and everything. It's just all the modalities you can utilize that we can afford to put in there at this point to recover better. So, you know, okay, maybe you don't have an injury, maybe you don't have something going on, but I mean, the biggest thing that I see from working in that model of the Division I athletics is, you know, how many times you see an athlete that's in the training room recovering, and how many times you see them in there because of an actual injury. The huge majority of them are in there just to recover, just so they can get through the workouts, you know, just so you guys can push them as strength coaches more, and they can improve and gain performance. So we have a whole room dedicated towards that. And that's kind of where the setup of that model goes. You know, and then it just becomes getting the patient, getting the athlete in the right situation for them to achieve whatever goal it is they have. You know, we like to go off of a motto to prepare, perform, and prevent. And really what that is, you know, where is that athlete, where is that patient, where is that client? You know, if there's someone that's in, you know, a situation where they're wanting to set up a launching pad for improvement in the off season, like, you know what, if they're a general population person that wants to just improve their health, you know, that's where we're at the prepare stage. You know, we're going to sit there, we're going to find out what it is that they need to do to help improve themselves to get it done, you know, and then once they're there, then we're just about keeping them performing, you know, keep it in through the season, trying to make sure that they're staying on top of their recovery, you know, all that good stuff. And then prevent, just being like, look, we addressed these issues before. These are the reasons why you had deficits in performance, or why you had pain, why you had an injury actually happen. And unfortunately, you know, nothing just happens in your body. It's usually due to some sort of wear and tear or stress, or something that, you know, if we could change a habit or change the way you do something or monitor the way you do something, a lot of times we can mitigate and prevent that from ever happening again. And so that's kind of the background of what we try to do and what we try to push for in that clinic. And it's just, again, why, you know, so much of it has to do with the strength and conditioning realm and just performance in general health is always going to be somewhat intertwined with that fitness industry.
Okay. And kind of on that same note, right? So you're now in Columbus, Ohio, which has huge ties to strength and conditioning with Westside, and then also with your background in RPR and athletics and powerlift or strongman. How has that all affected your knowledge base and how you just look at things, right? And where do you think you would be without some of that?
Man, like, so Columbus is like the shit. I mean, it is.
Okay.
It is. Columbus is one of those areas that it's like a perfect storm. Right? Like, you've got so many knowledgeable individuals in this area that there's so many factors that in just other places I don't feel like they have it to where it just breeds like strength, it breeds performance, it breeds like athletic competition. Like, the way I explain it is like, and this is no like, it's not trying to downplay anyone in any area that I've been so far, but my experiences so far is like, so I'm from Iowa, right? And like, I grew up in a town, 2,500 people. Like, I mean, our graduating class, 100 people in this farm town. You know, the biggest city we have is probably like 100,000 or 150,000 in Des Moines. So like, where we're at in Iowa, like, you know what? Like, we work really hard. Like, that's our thing. But there's not a whole lot of talent. There's not a whole lot of like, there's not a whole lot of economy there that's really going to drive what obviously needs to happen. Like, if you're in the private sector and you're trying to be a successful strength coach, either you're going to be dealing with a really small niche market, you know, or you're going to have, you know, the people just aren't going to be able to afford like your quality. You know what I mean? That's something we go back to into our clinic is like, you know, we're trying to be the, you know, Ferrari of healthcare. Like, we're trying to be the Whole Foods of healthcare. We're not, you know, if you want Walmart, like, that's cool, man, I get it, but like, that's not here, you know. Like, we're a cash business. Like, we're going to spend a lot of time with you. We're going to invest a lot of energy. We're going to educate you. We're going to do the things that allow you to have a high quality of life that, you know, if you don't want that, if that's not what you can, you know, can do, then, you know, okay. Right. So it you know, that's kind of Iowa in a nutshell. Like, there is some competition. There's definitely an ethic to work hard, but there's not as many resources, and when they go to a bigger place. You know, that's kind of the, you know, the small town that you leave and not that you come back to and stay. And then like in Memphis, you know, to me it's like almost the opposite. Like, there's a lot of like pretty decent talent, but the biggest thing I realized is that there wasn't really the push to like go do the right things, to, you know, to work harder or to pay for a service that is going to put, like, literally the strength and conditioning put me in a Division I facility. Like, put me in as an athlete, took me from, you know, probably a decent high school player to being a Division I athlete. So like, but that's like said to be, you know, value, but it's not really. It's just kind of like you talk about it, but then, oh, I don't want to have to pay for this or do that. So so it's kind of hard to run the business there. Like, dude, Columbus is like a perfect storm of, I mean, it's a small town feel where everyone's working hard. Everyone's like got tons of drive. There's some dang good athletes, and the economy is good enough that people are able to pay for it. But then, in all honesty, it just comes down to what's it worth. You know, I think everyone's got the time, everyone's got the money to invest in themselves. But like there, it's like, what can I do better? What can I do to get better? So it's really kind of a cool thing in Columbus. And then also it's definitely something that, you know, I see as, it's like that big fish in a big pond, only it's kind of more like a bunch of big fish in a small pond, right? So it's just like some areas just breed and attract like the best of everything, and in strength, like that's Columbus for you. You know what I mean? So, so that's really helped because there's a lot of resources there. I mean, I moved to be a bigger fish, you know, because I wouldn't consider myself a big fish yet, but I know if I put myself around that environment, like you have no choice but to improve yourself. So I felt like, you know, that move was really dictated towards making, a personal decision that, I want to get better and I want to be around those people that push me.
Yeah.
So that's definitely, something that's really been beneficial for me moving to Columbus so far. I've learned a crap ton being here.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. And that's kind of ties into, I believe the book's called The Talent Code, right? And it talks about like hotbeds of talent in certain areas. And that would be Columbus for strength. And so that's really cool to be in an area like that where, there's so many professionals like you were saying. And if you had to, in your opinion, what is one thing that, or multiple things that strength coaches can gain from regularly talking with professionals outside their realm?
Yeah, I think that it goes both ways, right? I mean, if I'm seeing benefit from talking to strength coaches and getting to know the strength world better or understand the strength world better, I mean, it definitely works the other way around. I mean, let me ask you this, like in your experience, like how many things do you see, with your athletes or with the guys that you're working with that like needs to be done, but you just don't have the time for?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's. If I don't know if I can put a number on it. There's always something small, nothing like gross motor movements, but little things that could be cleaned up. You know what I mean? That I won't necessarily have the time, or whether it be in that day or like long term. That they're not coming in consistently to work on. So, go ahead.
It's kind of that idea. Like honestly, I look at any industry about the same, where like there's always something to be learned. And it's kind of like, you should always assume that someone knows something you don't. So like, even if for selfish reasons, you're like, competitive and you're like one of those guys, I want to know more than everyone else. Like, what the best way to do that is? Go talk to everyone else and find out what they know.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, like, it just comes down to like, even the things that we mesh well on, when I get along really well with strength coaches, that's kind of the population. I'm like the middleman. Like I get along with the athletic training staff and I get along with the strength staff, and then like traditionally that's a realm where like they like each other, but they also kind of like, you're gonna hurt my athletes, or like, well, you're not allowing me to get them better. And so like I kind of hear both sides and just like play middleman on that. But I mean, just look at things like FMS, look at things that like movement screenings and all that stuff. Like, those are all things that you guys as strength coaches like value a crap ton. It just becomes, at the end of the day, like your job is to get your athletes better. So, my outlook is on that. Like, if there's it's a scarcity issue. There's only so much time that you can devote towards doing what it is you're supposed to be there to do, and you only get a certain amount of time with your athletes. So like, I 100% think that that good strength coaches, that the people that go through the strength industry now have the ability to learn and have the education and have the mentors now to be able to do a lot of the things we do at a fundamental level. It just becomes a matter of like, dude, I don't have time to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that was a funny question that you asked as well, because if all these athletes had perfect movement, we as coaches wouldn't really have a job. You know what I mean? Like, that's literally our job, is coaching every day to get them better. So,
right, and so it's like, as a strength, like that's how I look at it. Is like, you may, even if you want to do it for selfish reasons, like go talk to other professionals, because like one of the biggest things you'll see in the private sector is, so let's say you're an awesome private sector strength coach, like you've got a great gym set up and you have all these clients that you're training. If something is going wrong, that either A, you don't have the time to spend with that client, or B, you are like, well, I see there's an issue, I don't quite know what's going on, or the worst case is they get hurt. Which we can go a whole nother topic of that being like, as long as you're doing what you need to do, like, and you're a good strength coach, like I really doubt that those injuries are actually coming directly from like, oh, that one squat and you squat them and now they're hurt. You know what I mean? But then what happens if they go and seek a medical professional, if they go seek a different individual, like they may be gone for 3 weeks and come back and you're like, I don't know what the hell this person did to you. Like, I don't have a starting point to then come back from and go, okay, someone looked at you and we communicated and now I understand what they did in their realm, which then can transfer over to me understanding what I need to do to maybe build up a weak point.
Yeah.
And then here's our launching pad. Now we can get better.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Even if for selfish reasons, like you need to understand, like as a strength coach, that going out and building those relationships and talking to other people, like at least gives you an idea of, because there's good and bad everywhere, but at least gives you an idea of like, okay, who are the guys that I trust, that I talk well with, that aren't going to downplay what I'm doing, that, you know, for selfish reasons that I can actually trust. So when I need something, I can send them there, and then they get results. It makes me look better, and then I can come back and be a better strength coach.
Yeah. No, I get that. But I'm 100% with you. And I think not enough people like to step outside their realm. So, again, it's super refreshing to be able to talk to you and, hear that hunger to learn, even with someone at your level that has a wide background. So that's really, really important, I think. So, but moving on to this next question, right? So will you tell us a little bit about how you got started in RPR?
Yeah. Dude, like... It's funny because I'm on your show or on your podcast right now because of I'm a healthcare professional. I literally feel like everything I've done in healthcare is directly related to the strength industry. Yeah. Like that's why I don't I get to the point now where I don't even see the difference between the two to some degree. Which again, just on that note, when you learn information from other individuals, I'll take what I learned about strength and conditioning, and I'm going to apply it to healthcare. Whereas you should, take information you learn about healthcare and apply it to strength and conditioning. And it's kind of where RPR goes.
Okay.
So I found out about RPR through the strength industry. I found out about it through the owner of NBS Fitness, David Allen, who's again a columnist with the Elite FTS. Okay. So for those that I don't know if may or may not be as well known, but if you follow Elite FTS, there's a couple articles written back in I want to say it was June or May of 2016, and it was a couple logs by Dave Tate, and then one by an article by JL Holdsworth where it was how Dave Tate put 90 pounds on his squat, or had a 90-pound PR. And maybe it got lost in the mix, but it's definitely a good one to read. So at that point in time, what happened is, the story about RPR is essentially there's three co-founders, and it's JL Holdsworth, Cal Dietz, and Chris Corfus. So some pretty big names in the strength and performance industry, and they took this seminar by Douglas Hill called Be Activated, and just like I'm saying, man, through their lens of being great strength coaches, they learned a lot of good information from it, and we're holy crap, this could help people perform better. This could help a lot of athletes, a lot of people in our realm. So then they took that, and the first thing JL did when he got done taking the seminar, he came back and he did it on Dave. So it's so then Dave had the response he did, and that instantly was kind of okay, we need to start getting this information out there. People need to know about this stuff. So then what happened was they held their first seminar, and Dave sent out a personal email to everyone on the Elite FTS team and said hey man, this every single one of you needs to send someone up here to learn this, because this is insane. You know what I mean? So anyways, that was just kind of, again, word of mouth to the strength industry of David Allen was hey, this is coming directly from Dave, so this is obviously something worthwhile. But I kind of feel it's not really in my realm. You're here, you could probably utilize this better once you go take it. I had literally no idea what it was about at all. Okay. So I just took it. I saw, okay, I'll sign up for it. Drop $1,000. Drive to Columbus. Whatever, man. If it's good enough for someone that I respect that much in the strength industry, I'm gonna go find out what it's about. So that's how I got started into it. That's how I met my business partner. That's how, I took that very first seminar, RPR, and it was freaking life-changing. So then after that, I just kind of stuck with it. I had the same experience. Man, people need to know more about this. I introduced them to a couple different colleges. Just start talking about it, really. And then after a while, I just kept keeping up with JL, and just sharing my experiences of what I was having going on.
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to have an opportunity to apply it at the college level with a lot of different, athletes. So track and field has been the best, like, learning experience for using RPR. It's purely performance based.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
So that's kind of how I got into it. And then all of a sudden it was kind of like, it's growing, it's building momentum. Like, hey, why don't you come teach with us?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got started in RPR.
Okay.
And it's just been an awesome system to get involved with.
That's awesome. So kind of moving on with that thought of RPR. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what have you learned from it, and how has it changed your outlook? And then follow up to that, what would you say to the naysayers of RPR?
So it's kind of interesting because, like I said, RPR for me really changed a lot of things in the way I look at the body, or the way I do what I do. Mm-hmm. It didn't take away from anything, and that's kind of what we teach with RPR. Is it's really more there to add to what you do and make everything you do better. So it's not, when I say it changed the way I looked at things and the way I operated, it didn't mean I went back and said, like, dude, all the stuff I do is bullshit, I can't do that.
Okay.
There's a way better way, like all this stuff. I think a lot of times, a lot of continuing education or like seminars or systems, like, they try to downplay other systems.
Yeah,
or, like,
most definitely.
Try to downplay other businesses. Or like a strength coach tries to downplay this strength coach, and it's like, at the end of the day, most of those seminars and most of those systems are based on like the same science. So like, if you're putting down one or trying to discredit the other to make yours look good, like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because you're at a degree you are actually downplaying your own system by doing that.
Exactly.
So,
and you can actually see that. This is really common when in strength and conditioning, when a new strength coach comes in, right? And then the new one says, oh, what you were doing before was trash, but similar stuff, but, so continue on your point.
You don't Olympic lift, how the hell could you not do that?
Right, exactly. It's
like that.
Yeah. It's crazy.
But, so, like, in RPR, like, when I say that I looked at stuff differently, it's, I knew, and I think we all kind of know, that there's gaps in our professions and in our education.
Yeah.
Like, that it's like when you're watching someone squat and you're doing all the things right as a coach. And you're saying, like, hey, man, this time think about this cue, and, you're giving them, knees out or whatever cues you like to use. You're setting them up correctly. Like the lift, you've taught that person how to do the lift correctly. They're not like, just a kid that's going to blow you off and they don't really care. Like, they want to do it correctly, and yet, like, there's something there, like, their knee keeps crashing in, right?
Yeah.
Like, for some reason, they don't fire their glutes or whatever it is. And that's, like, there's similar gaps in my profession that I realize, like, all right, there's something missing here. Like, I have an idea of what I want to do, but I feel like there's something missing that I could be, like, improving this better or quicker.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where, like, RPR came in and helped basically fill those gaps. So it added to what I did.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, like, the gaps are that basically the body's currently being explained incompletely.
Yeah.
So, for example, like, in the realm that we, you and I both work with in a lot of situations, like, we learn the body as being the musculoskeletal system, and then the nervous system being separate. And really, like, the correct way to be looking at that system, it's the neuromusculoskeletal system.
Yeah.
So, like, the nervous system controls everything.
Yeah.
And then so with RPR, like, RPR is geared towards, giving you a lens to understand the nervous system, and then not only being able to understand the nervous system in the body, but then here's a tool you can actually do to affect the nervous system. So, like, I can go into a little bit of an analogy, because the thing about RPR is it's more go than show. Like, I can talk about RPR and it'll help kind of give people an idea of what's going on, but really, like, think about the reasons you took RPR initially, and maybe the things you heard versus like when you actually took the seminar and then what you felt.
Yeah, it's hard to really explain it, you know what I mean? Because when I heard it from other people, yeah, you're hitting on points and it hurts real bad, you know what I mean? But that's kind of the very simplistic view of it, and that's kind of mostly what I heard. So when I first heard of it, I was like, I gotta see what this is for myself, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And then like once you're in that and you're like, oh crap, that's what, oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
Like you actually start realizing what it is once you're actually in the seminar and experiencing it.
Exactly.
But if I'm just trying to elaborate to explain it a little bit more to where like, hey, you can listen to this and try to gain a little more concept of what we're thinking about. So like RPR is explaining the lens of the nervous system.
Yeah.
And when we talk about that neuromusculoskeletal system and how it's been explained incorrectly, the example we use is kind of like the lighting system in your house, right? So if you were to look up at a light in your house, like the first thing you're going to see is your light bulb.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like your muscles. Like in the body, that's like your muscles. So like we can see the light bulb, we can see the muscles, right? We can tell if the muscle's working correctly or not. Those are visual things we can call out right away. Like, oh, hey, here's a problem because I can see it.
Yeah.
Right? So if you look a little closer, or if you need to look a little bit more further into it, you probably notice like the fixtures that hold the light bulb or multiple light bulbs together. So that's like the next level in the body for us. That's like your bones and your tendons, fascia, like everything that holds your body in place and allows for coordinated, forces to be distributed correctly, and for that movement to go from a local to a global movement pattern, right? So then, the question after that goes like, what's really controlling that system though? And what's controlling that system is the electricity, right? So the problem is that when we educate though, is that we're typically stopping at the light in the fixture.
Yeah.
So when we see a light bulb go out, when the muscles aren't working or there's pain, what do? We typically go to the light bulb. We try to change it, move it around a little bit or something. That's typically the first approach.
Yeah.
And then like, okay, change the light bulb, still not an issue, or still not working. Okay, so moved around a little bit, maybe got some myofascial therapy, like still not working. So like, okay, what's the next step? Well, they failed trial of care, or we worked through it for a month and deloaded their training and still not getting better. So okay, now we got to send them to that next level. We send them to that structural level. So maybe you go to a surgeon, or you go like your sports doc, and he does an MRI. Like, so we're trying to find some sort of structural problem with our body to blame that pain or dysfunction on.
Yeah.
And the problem is we're spending all this time, working on the light bulbs and fixtures, and in certain situations, this is where you see the gaps in practice, where you're like not getting the results you want, and you can't figure out what the heck's going on. And the issue is like, because we're neglecting that electricity, no one's thought about like, hey, let's make sure the power's on. Like, what if that light switch isn't flipped on?
Yeah.
So if the power's not working, or if it's running shitty, like you can change that light bulb all day long.
Yeah.
Replace that fixture all day long. The problem's going to still be there. And
exactly.
It's just going to blow that next light bulb, or it's going to it's going to ruin that next fixture.
Yeah. I think we see that a lot with like the ACL, right? A lot of people just treat the knee, but we got to treat the surrounding stuff. So I think that's a really good analogy.
Right. And non-contact injuries, like that's the big thing, right? Because look at, this is the funny thing is like it's not as if we don't understand that like either the nervous system is involved, or that there's not something that we can try to do to make it better. It's just like we keep going back to that like light bulb or fixture type mindset.
Yeah.
Right? Like you realize, and strength coaches realize like, dude, we're getting ACL injuries. And some of these guys are like non-contact ACL injuries. There's no real reason. Like, there's got to be something going on that's causing these things, right? And that's where we got into talking about, how that compensation pattern works. And if that individual's not driving hip flexion or extension correctly, they're going to pull from other regions to create that primary movement and to basically prioritize that movement, right? So, so the funny thing is, like, we realize, like, that the nervous system is important, but, like, we just like either one or two things end up happening. Is like either the education system is going to separate them, in which case like we need to re-put that neuro in there. Like, okay, so every system you learn in the body should have neuro before it. Like it's the neuroendocrine system, the neurocardiopulmonary system, the neuromusculoskeletal system. Like again, because that nervous system controls everything. And then the other, like when we go out and we say stuff like, you know, sports are 80% mental and 20% physical, or like you get a guy that, you know, just having a crappy day, like, oh man, your CNS is probably shot, you know, or oh, like I can see you're compensating, and then we go back into the mindset of like, okay, well it must mean this muscle's tight, so let's stretch it. You know what I mean? And just completely neglect, like, you literally just hit the nail on the head. But I think the reason behind that is because there's not like a good tool to actually like analyze and decide like, okay, this is what's going on, this is how we actually fix it.
No, that's a really good point. I like that. And a lot of people, like you're saying, a lot of people, for whatever reason, you know what I mean, the nervous system is king. Like, what do we want? We want fast athletes, we want strong athletes. How do we get that? We have athletes with a highly reactive nervous system, you know what I mean? But then we don't treat the nervous system. We just completely leave it out to dry for some reason.
Right. Or you just kind of like, oh, I guess that's how it is. Or, you know, like, again, I think it comes down to like everyone wants to get better. Everyone wants to make their athletes better. And it just becomes like, can we find the right tools to get that done? And then let's go ahead and do that. You know, so like for me, like, and I'll bash on my medical education or the chiropractic education just to make it like more personal to me, because I had the same education you did, but like the biggest thing, and I think, do you remember me going through this in the seminar where I did the side lying glute med test? Like So to me, this was like, and it's like what, midway through the seminar when we go through this. So like that to me was that, and we kind of say like everyone's going to have that light bulb moment when they're in the seminar where they're like, holy crap, wow, you know, and that was for me because like, so one of the biggest things that literally stuck with me my entire life was I've always been told I like had weak glutes, or anytime I go into an issue with like, oh, my squat's not getting better, or my deadlift's not getting better, or I can't bench, you know, whatever my plateau is in the strength training realm, like typically always like it was something common knowledge. I was like, if someone asked me what my biggest problem is, like, oh, it's probably my glutes. You know, so like, and then when you're in your education, like in chiropractic school, you know, we go through like orthopedic testing, and so you be doing like your different myotomes, and you know, you hit all the upper extremity, you go into the lower extremity, and like I would have this issue, but not only just me, but like everyone would have this issue. You go and you do the glute med L5 myotome test. Basically, for anyone that doesn't know what that is, it's you're basically lying on your side, and you're basically in a stacked hip, stacked knee position. Legs are straight, and you basically just abduct your upper, the top leg, up in the air. And then the test is just a quick like, hey, hold, don't let push you down, right? And like every time, like that, I barely could even get my leg up to where I felt like I could hold up on its own, let alone pressure. So someone presses on it, it goes straight down. Well, like in the medical realm, that's supposed to be a sign of like a nerve loop bruise or some sort of spinal issue, like a disc or whatever. And so it's kind of like, okay, I know my history, I know what's going on in my body, I know I don't have that. Why the hell is that going down so easy? Well, I guess it just, we know you're not, you're not having a spinal nerve root compression or anything like that, so just move on. You know what I mean? It's just like, that bugged me for a while. And then like, that would be something, okay, now I want to work on my glutes. Well, clamshells will help, man. Just still go to a bunch of clamshells. Like, I'm not the strongest athlete in the world, but like, I couldn't understand how clamshells laying on my side doing like no weight was going to somehow make my squat bigger, So when we took the RPR seminar, like, we literally test that same plane of motion. Like, all I have to do is look you on your side, the same exact test. And what you realize is, like, dude, your motor patterns are off. Like, your nervous system is not firing that motor pattern correctly. Correct the nervous system, that sucker not only goes strong, it feels like someone could lay on you and you're holding that leg up in abduction. So it's like, how many times in just a performance mindset someone does that test, goes, oh, you have weak glutes, and I just sit here and just wear yourself out doing, corrective exercises for, an issue that's not a corrective exercise or a muscle strength issue, right? I mean, not to dog a corrective exercise, like when they need to do that, when they need to strengthen an area, like there's definitely times where we do RPR on someone, we get their nervous system working correctly, the motor pattern's locked in, they just need to get stronger, man.
But they have to be applied at a correct time, so that's a good point.
So that was something that really resonated with me, and it's crazy because I thought it only really affected me, but like I brought that same process into the seminar when I taught it at Memphis, and the head athletic trainer like stopped me. He's like, all right, like here's the issue. We get guys all the time that'll go in for a lower back complaint, and the orthopedic surgeon will go in and they'll test that exact test, and they're going to rule that guy out for 2 or 3 weeks. So now it's like, oh shit, like that doesn't even just affect me in the sports realm, like, and that's not the, like I've heard it 2 or 3 more times after that, like people hang their hat on that test, and it's like, by all means, I know that test works, like, but let's make sure it's not a false positive. Let's make sure the nervous system isn't the issue, because that's a quick fix, right? I mean, what, 10 seconds and that thing's locked in. So that's really where, like I said, like I can't explain that to you. Like you have to feel it. Because if you've never felt your glutes fire correctly, or you've never felt like, oh, I always feel it when I squat in my quads. Everything I do, I can't feel my glutes. Like, I no shit, like, my glutes are freaking well developed now. You know what I mean? Like, and I feel all the time in them, and I never had before. And then now I do. You know, so I mean, for the naysayers, like, I don't really have to say a whole lot because it speaks for itself. Like you go into the seminar and you're gonna see a result. Like, and it's instant. And then at that point, to even further what it's actually doing, like, there's no strength training going on. So the only way you get stronger, quote unquote stronger in that movement pattern, is by changing the nervous system. So like if you have an open mind and you're actually paying attention to what's going on, you're gonna realize like what actually is happening, even if, like, the biggest thing a naysayer is going to say, and I've had it and it's fine, like, is, oh, where's the evidence on this? It's like, well, there's leaders and followers, right? So there's followers that are going to wait until evidence comes out to go like, oh, I'm going to actually trust that and do that. But the other problem is, like, the evidence-based, like, model, and this is, I'm going to write an article on this too, but it might piss some people off that are listening to this. Like, the evidence-based model, to me, has become more of a buzzword, or like a card to play when you don't understand something and don't want to accept it. Like, oh, well, there's no evidence, so we can't apply this, even though literally in front of you we just made a difference. And I don't know if it's 100% malicious. I think that it's lost its valor in what evidence-based actually means. Because evidence-based means there's actually 3 pillars of evidence-based, right? Like, do you know what they are?
I don't.
Okay, so you'll probably you'll agree with them. It's just putting it in words, but like, so the 3 pillars of evidence-based is the expectations, knowledge, and experiences of the clinician, strength coach, etc. The expectations and experiences of the patient or athlete. And then finally, the third one is what the current literature says. So what that's saying is, like, and I think that young professionals need to understand this more, is, like, to be a good clinician, to be a good strength coach, like, you should be listening to and paying attention to the experiences that are going on right in front of you. Because 2 of those 3 pieces are what you're seeing and feeling, and what you know, and what your athlete is seeing and feeling. Right? So, like, then on top of that, the last thing that's going to come out is going to be the literature. So the interesting thing is, like, people are going like, well, where's the science in this? Where's the evidence? And it's like, well, first of all, we've covered a lot of concepts you probably already know, right? We covered Yonda stuff. We covered, we covered different myofascial trains and planes, and we covered a lot of stuff that has a lot of science in it already. That's been based, and really, science is never, like, there's not a whole lot of new discoveries. It's just reutilizing and repackaging of information to apply it to a certain realm, which again is why you should be talking to other people and learning what other people know.
Yeah.
But so like what people don't realize is like, okay, so at your seminar that you took in Chattanooga, UT,
yeah, UT
Chattanooga, like we had, I think we had like, do we have like 40 people there? I think we had it was a decent amount.
About, yeah.
So we had 40 people, and within the first hour, I stood you guys all up, and I all had you do 3 self-tests. Yeah. Right? I had you guys do we had a 1-arm field goal raise, basically just, full arm abduction, or full arm flexion. And then we had you do a squat, and then we had you bend down and try to touch your toes. Yeah. So 3 tests, and one of them is actually objective. And then all we did is we taught you the wake-up drills, the RPR wake-up drills, where literally you do the implementation on yourself. And then we had you retest, and we asked everyone how they felt. And 38 out of 40 people said they either felt better or got better range of motion or both. Yeah. So, like, we just did science. Like, right then and there, and, okay, 30 out of 40 people, is that a significant, finding? Like, hell yeah, it is. Yeah. But then moving on to that, like, how do you get, evidence? Like, how do you get literature? Like, you get literature because there's groundwork that gets played on that, right? Yeah. Like, the first step to getting literature is what we literally did at that seminar. Yeah. We have a bunch of forward-minded thinking people that are there to learn and get better. We all go through, we do the same thing. Maybe there's not every single little control accounted for, but that's how lower evidence goes. But we all got a result, and it was all consistent. And then we're going around the country, around the nation, around the world, and we're getting these same exact results every single time. Yeah. It's a same measurable result. Like, well, eventually what happens is people start going like, there's something here, let's start studying it. Yeah. And then 10 years of studying, and we finally get a randomized controlled trial, peer-reviewed literature article saying, look, this works. And you've got people have been doing it for 10 years now going like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah, exactly right.
So they're on to the next thing. They're already on to the next thing that's going to take 10 more years for people to catch up on that are waiting till evidence comes out. Yeah. So, and that's not to say like evidence is bullshit. Absolutely not. Like science is like, I'm not saying anything bad about science. It's just, I think people are leaning too much on everyone else making a decision for them instead of doing the work and understanding like, look, at some point in time, like, how many years ago was it when if you walked into a collegiate training facility, or you didn't have collegiate training facilities, you walked into and talked to a strength coach at a college and said, hey, you talked to an actual head coach at a college, and you go, hey, I'm a strength coach, or I train people to get stronger. Yeah. And I think that, doing some strength training, lifting some weights is going to make your athlete stronger or faster. Like, how long ago was that seen as being, like, the stupidest shit you could possibly say? Yeah, yeah. And then now it's like, if you say that, like, you're like, well, yeah, of course. Like, why wouldn't we have
it's common knowledge, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, everything starts somewhere.
Exactly.
I mean, how many years ago, if you would have said, like, oh, the Russians are out there giving people steroids, or whoever is giving people steroids and it's making them stronger. There's literally people who go, that's bullshit. That's not really what's going on. Yeah. Now, like, you know what I mean? Like, we're making sure people aren't doing that,
Exactly,
so it's just like, everything starts somewhere, so you have to kind of realize that if you're on the cutting edge of stuff, like, there are going to be some naysayers, but at the end of the day, it's like, if you can't accept what's going on in front of you, maybe that's more of a personal issue than us not being scientific.
Yeah. And you can see it in business too, right? There's early adopters and there's late adopters. And, the late adopters, you're just not going to be ahead of the science. Yeah, but that makes complete sense. If you're doing something on the cutting edge, there's no way that you can get all the sanctions and the science and the papers and stuff to support it in time. You know what I mean? It's just how it works.
And the funny thing about that, like, especially the unique thing with RPR is, like, we talk about, like, strength training or whatever will make you better, or whatever medical, advancement is, like, going to make these patients better or something. Like, the cool thing with RPR, because RPR is more about teaching and empowering the athlete and the individual than it is, like, getting some clinician that knows everything. Like, you're going to have, in 5 to 10 years, you're going to have high school athletes, and we already do. You're going to have high school athletes and parents going like, well, yeah, of course it's the nervous system that's affecting that. You know, of course. Like, like right now we're working with high school athletes and high school teams, like high-end high school teams right now, and we're teaching them RPR. We're teaching them to do the nervous system on themselves. And like, I can't even tell you like the kind of abilities and leadership that builds in those athletes, because they know that they can affect themselves and they can help their teammates, right? We're sitting on the sidelines, and you know, we've got a high stress situation going on, and we've got 10 kids telling each other like, hey, belly breathe. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just like, okay, they understand, like, if I belly breathe and I'm stressed, and if I belly breathe, that actually stimulates my parasympathetic nervous system, that calms me down, that makes me perform better. Like, that's something that if you don't have a mode of teaching, you know, to athletes or to the general population, it's like every seminar has to be like, oh, I'm the smartest motherfucker in the world, listen to me. You know, you go in and you go, oh man, I went to that seminar, man, that dude was so smart, like I don't understand any of it, but man, that guy has it figured out. Like, no, man, like you affect people by making it a complex situation. Like, that kid doesn't know how to spell sympathetic. But he knows what the heck's going on in his body because we taught him how to do it. And he can make that effect and change that, you know? So it's just, that's the part. And at the end of the day, like, you know why that athlete buys into it? It's because an athlete doesn't care about the science. An athlete cares about winning and getting better. So if you can show them and prove to them that they're going to get better, they don't care if you spent how many days and years and whatever. Like, they don't care.
Not at all,
my hip flexor? Okay, cool. You know what I mean?
No, that's a good point. And then just kind of moving forward in interest of time, right? You kind of mentioned writing some articles or some topics you might write an article on. So will you tell us a little bit how you got connected to Elite FDS and some of the meaningful connections you've been able to make through all your continuing education?
Hey, you're one of them, right? You're a meaningful connection.
I appreciate that.
It's awesome, man, to be able to do this. It was funny because we were just talking the other day about like wanting to get on more podcasts, and sure enough, I was like, oh shit, man, why don't you send me an email? You want to be on the podcast? Cool.
Here we go. Exactly.
Exactly. So like with the FTS, we kind of get in the nuts and bolts of this maybe in a little bit, but like, in all reality, it just came into like, you work and you put in the work, right? You build a network, you know, you get to know everyone, and once you're just a good person, like like you're in the strength profession for legitimate reasons, you're being a genuine individual, like you you're gonna meet people in this industry. Like, for young people that are out there and they're, you know, they want to get amped up about fitness and they want to get into fitness. Like, I mean, the fitness industry and strength and conditioning is booming right now. And it's freaking awesome, you know? So like, if you're someone that wants to, you know, progress and make a career out of it, like, you got to be in it for the right reasons. First of all, you have to be genuine about yourself as a person, and don't try to oversell yourself, because people see through that shit. I mean, I don't know your back. Have you done any powerlifting or like strongman like competitions or anything like that?
No, I have my background is primarily in basketball, and then it kind of went into Olympic lifting a little bit, but I've never competed.
Okay, so like the biggest thing about when you look at like competing in strength sports is like, yes, just like anywhere else, there's a lot of like shitheads out there, but at the end of the day, like, most people are actually really awesome, really genuine people. Like, I might be competing against you, and I forgot my chalk, and you're going to give me your chalk, which technically gives me a competitive advantage versus not having chalk. And like, you know what I mean? Like, it's a very pure sport. So like, people can tell what you're about pretty damn quick, you know, and I love that about it. So like, for me, it was just, you know, like I said, like, the why for me was easy. Like, if I never did a single thing in strength sports, like, I'm probably going to be in a gym until I'm 60, 70 years old trying to train. At least if I can. Exactly. You know, so my motivation of anything I've done in the strength industry wasn't like trying to be instant famous or some crap. Like, I just love lifting. You know, I love being in that environment. It's done a lot for me in my life. So, you know, now I look up to certain people in the FTS, like, when I'm growing up. Like, I started following the FTS when I was probably 20 years old, 21 years old.
Okay.
And just started reading some stuff and, like, you know, just getting more information. You realize, like, oh, hey, these guys know what they're talking about. They're good people. They give back. You know, they educate. So, like, hey, you know what? At 20 years old, I don't have a lot to offer anymore.
Yeah.
You know, but, hey, I'm getting some good information here. It's helping me. Like, those are all, you know, I remember that, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's brand loyalty if you want to talk about business. Like, you know, you help a 20-year-old improve themselves and not expect anything in return, like, that's brand loyalty. You know, so eventually as I'm working through all this stuff and navigating, you know, my career, like, strength is still a big part of it. So, you know, obviously building my network and meeting people like, you know, David Allen over at NBS Fitness and working with him, and then, you know, through that meeting JL and stuff, like, obviously that gives me, you know, I meet a lot of people on the team. So, like, I've trained out there a few times and stuff, but in all honesty, like, I've only really known Dave for a few months now, and, like, I was going with a team member to train at the S5 compound, like, as much as I possibly could on a Saturday. Yeah. For probably 4 or 5 times, and mildly even had a conversation with him. Yeah. And really what it was is, like, back in 2016, like, I just started writing and contributing. Like, I started writing and sending in an article 100% for free. Like, hey, if it doesn't get posted, it doesn't get posted. But, like, I feel like I'm in a position where I can start to get back. I don't know everything, but I can start to get back. You know? So it really just comes down to putting down the work, you know, and then just sticking with it. People eventually are going to find out if you're well-intentioned or not. And, you know, at the other end of the day, like, if it doesn't work out that you're going to provide a value or that you can help, like, then it doesn't. And maybe you can't. Maybe it's another 5 years. But, like, honestly thought I'd be writing for them as just a submission, an outside submission for another, like, 2 or 3 years before anyone said to me, like, hey, man, you know, we want to bring you on to write. And that's just kind of how it happened. So, I mean, I started getting an opportunity to work with Dave. You know, honestly, like, put it this way, when Dave talks about he will answer any Instagram DM, he will answer any Instagram DM. Really? Like, I sent him a few emails about, like, wanting to work together, or, like, hey, this is who I am. And it finally took me DMing him, and even then it didn't go anywhere. And then I kind of had, again, like, oh, hey, this is who I am. It actually happened. I was training out there, and I basically just offered, like, hey, I want to help give back, and the only way I know how to give back is to give back to the team. You know, so, hey, I want to help out. I want to help you guys, like, just like our business. Like, I want to help your athletes, your team get better, because, like, you guys have helped me as an athlete and as a clinician. So it was funny because, like, I pretty much got a no. Like, to me, it came off like a straight up nope. Sorry. Yeah. And okay, cool. Like, that's fine, man. I'm just gonna keep on writing and blah 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 and all this stuff. And like, I was actually out there training. Like, literally, I don't even think he knew who the hell I was. Well, I know he didn't know who the hell I was. Yeah. Because I was out there the next weekend training, and, you know, all of a sudden, like, he's like right behind me. He's like, "Hey, were you the one that sent me that DM?" I was like, "Yeah." We just started talking, and we started, you know, that's how the relationship formed. So like, I mean, aside from that, it's like I said, it's like, those things, like, you're never entitled to anything. And in all honesty, I still don't feel like I'm entitled to anything. I still feel like I should have to do 3 or 4 more years of work to even be in the same room as someone like that, you know, or to be in that conversation. So at the end of the day, like, you need to be in it for the right reasons, and you need to just work and just put in the time, learn, get better, and then, you know, certain opportunities come up. You need to address every opportunity you can.
That's good advice. Yeah. So no, that's really good advice. A lot of people need to hear that, because especially in this entitled generation, you know. So I really like that. But a lot of your articles on Elite FDS, right? They have to do with recovery. So how can strength coaches do a better job across the board of monitoring the recovery aspect?
You know, I think it's pretty simple, actually. I think, like I said, I think the way education has developed in the right way, I think, like, strength coaches have a huge amount of education in what they do, like, more than I think they realize. You know, like, again, just, like, go back to that conversation, like, the people that have probably influenced me the most have the least amount of letters behind their names. Like, I don't think Dave or JL are even, like, CSCS.
Really? Yeah,
you know
yeah. That's
like,
funny to think about.
Like, you know what I mean? It's just because I spent how many years in the shit at Westside or wherever they are learning, like, and they're applying it.
Yeah.
So, like, I think, and if you listen to kind of the people who are, they didn't get the education too because it wasn't there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you listen to like those guys talk, and they talk about like, dude, the education is so much better, the opportunity is so much better, like the research, the science behind everything is so much better than it used to be as far as just general understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Like training concepts, you can probably still apply the same stuff they were doing how many years ago and get results. I don't think that changes, but like, I think a lot of coaches know exactly what recovery is all about. It's just more of, you know, being able to better define it to the athlete,
mm-hmm.
and then understanding the applications of recovery. So like, you know, at the end of the day, if you've got an athlete that is not eating right, that's not sleeping right, you know, isn't drinking enough water, like they're not recovering.
Yeah,
you know, that's 1, 2, and 3. Like everything else is kind of a byproduct, right? So that, like, I'm not, you know, bringing up any new information there, but I think what I mean by learn to apply it more is like, and this I'm still navigating these waters too, but like learning how to listen to your athletes or to see what's going on in your athletes.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is like, and again, nothing I'm saying is an original thought. I'm just basically piggybacking other people's shit. So like Jim Wendler at the SPS seminar, I think it was last year, or no, it was in the spring of this year. He mentioned kind of how like modulates training and some of the stuff they're doing over at London High School. And one of the things he said that really stuck with me and made a lot of sense is like, you know, one of the biggest things that he was able to utilize and just understand, like, hey, what's this athlete telling me, is like, well, just pay attention to them before training, you know, as much as, at least in guys, and I think the same thing happens with girls because they love to talk and mess around too, but like, you know, when your team is, if you're in a team setting and like your guys are getting ready for a training session or for a practice or for a competition, and like no one's saying a word, like just kind of sitting around, like, yeah, they're probably not recovering well enough. You know what I mean? Like,
that makes sense.
That's a sign their body isn't feeling great. You know, like if they're up, you know, slap-dicking around, like joking and all that stuff, like guess what? Like their body probably feels pretty good. There's an emotional response, or you can see that in an athlete, you know, based on how they're feeling, how their nervous system, in all reality, how their nervous system is really feeling. So I think it's more just being able to frame and understand what that athlete's doing. But like, so a couple other examples that I've kind of been seeing, like, is, you know, so for example, it's like if you're trying to teach someone how to squat, that's one thing. But like, part of being a good coach and teaching someone how to squat is also articulating what they should feel during the squat. And like, my perception of pressure or of something firing or, you know, loading a certain area, like my perception of how I feel that is going to be hard to communicate with you at some degree. And so like being able to verbalize what you feel is often going to be different between people, right? I mean, do you see that too?
Yeah, most definitely.
So like, my thought is, you know, when you have an athlete that comes in and they say like, I just don't feel right, things feel off, you know, nothing feels like it's firing the way it should, I feel like I'm completely out of place, like, for me, and I've just been saying it to myself, and I'm finally like, oh wow, maybe that's what I'm actually telling myself something. I'll be like, I just feel gassed. Like, I feel completely fatigued. Like, there's not really a huge reason for it, but like, I just feel gassed. That's my way of like saying like, my nervous system's messed up, I'm not recovering well. Like, those are the little warning signs of like, hey, maybe we need to increase some recovery on this individual. And then it just gets down to education. And so here's another good thing is like, on my end, I think my biggest job is to, in the private sector or until I get back into collegiate sports, my biggest job is to teach kids when they're high schoolers to recover. Because like, what's your first thought about every single freshman that comes in? You know? It's, shit, we got a lot of work to do.
Exactly.
And that plays out because like, there is no education of those things. Like, they don't know those things coming into it. like you have to teach. You probably have schools that you guys do or don't like recruiting from because of the fact that those kids come in and you have all this work to do on how to teach them how to squat correctly.
Yeah.
So the same thing applies to recovery.
Okay. No, that's a really good point, right? So moving on. So what are some topics that you are really passionate about that you feel the industry needs to know more about?
I think just in general and I'm not going to act like I've been in it for a while because I'm still 29. I'm young.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think what's helped me a lot is just, trying to figure out how to develop myself as being young, but just in general, the development of young professionals and young coaches.
Yeah.
And this is one of the articles I have written with the FTS, which is called, learn from the back to lead from the front. And it's just kind of I know a lot of guys come out of school or they come out into a situation where they feel like they're ready or they feel like they know everything or they feel like they can help. And I think that's really what's going on. They just really want to help and they want to do those things.
Yeah.
It's a good idea at the same time to just sit back and listen and learn.
Yeah.
And just like I said, I don't have a single original thought, that didn't come from someone else's thinking or someone else's work. So you're better off instead of rediscovering the wheel, just to learn how the wheel works and to try to make it better. So the first part of that comes from learning, so and that goes right into as much as I said that education's important, your education doesn't mean shit in the grand scheme of things if you're not constantly developing yourself. If you rely on 4 years or if you're in and become a doctor and do stuff, if you rely on 8 years education to carry you for the next 40 or 50 years, I don't know who you're kidding, you know what I mean? It's just, you have to get better every day. Education never stops. It's always something you have to have some sort of drive in you or understanding that you need to get better every day because like you said, in 5 years, tons of stuff happens.
Oh man,
It's just you have to constantly be on top of stuff and working to progress and working to get better. I would say too is be ready for stuff to change. How many times has your training philosophy and how you train athletes changed over the years?
That's a great question. Yeah. No, every time I get a new piece of information, it changes. Not the true philosophy, but you tweak it based off what you know. You know what I mean? So
right, and then to that point, it's I saw this more as an athlete because I spent more time being an athlete than I have a clinician so far. But if you look back from what you were doing when you first started in this profession to where you are now, just the ego portion of everything, trying to be the best, you're probably gonna be holy shit, what was I doing back then? Oh my god, I did that to this athlete.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's understanding to hold a high standard of care is that, or a standard of practice is as long as at every given point in time you're doing the absolute best that you can with the info that you have, there's no need to ever look back and go oh my god, look at what I did back then.
Yeah.
But to the same degree, if you look back and you're doing the same thing in 5 years, there's probably some issues going on.
Yeah, most definitely.
You're not getting better, and I think that comes from just being consistent over time. If you can get just a little bit better every day, read a little bit every day. And I know it sounds super cliche. I know as I'm growing as a professional too, I realize all the cliche shit I heard when I was 18 or 20, and it's okay, whatever, I'll do that. And I didn't really pay much attention. Literally, that's all you need to do. Just be consistent over time, read, learn, and you are going to, be a better professional. You're going to be a better coach. You're going to develop over time.
Yeah.
And so I listened to a podcast yesterday, where they were saying they actually, you draw that out, right? So an hour a day is 7 hours in a week, and they just ran that out where it's you get 12 extra days in a year of learning if you're, doing something little by little consistently over time.
Yeah.
So I think development of the young professional is just, for me, I think in the future, I'm probably going to migrate out of clinical practice and more build a situation where I'm just helping teach more. It's just kind of where I'm seeing, like, I love being on a podcast like this and talking to you and like trying to help others. So like I kind of see myself as being less of a, like, I'm going to do all the work and I'm going to help, you know, just like with RPR, right? Like if I can help 50 people, that's great and all, but what if I can help 50 people help 50 people? You know what I mean? So I think eventually that's where I'm going to be anyways. And you know, I'm excited to, hey, wherever that goes, we'll go that direction. But you know, everything is just emotions. Like as a guy, like, and my, you know, my girlfriend will tell you, like, I do not give a shit about emotions, like traditionally. Like that, your emotions don't matter. Like it doesn't matter about how you feel, you know, all this stuff. And it's like, well, actually, like, I think we need to start looking into emotions more. We've got some really great stuff going down the pipeline with RPR. That has a lot to do with emotions. Like just as a teaser, look at it this way. If we go back to the light fixture, in that light fixture analogy, we follow it all the way back up to the light switch. The emotions are your fuse box. So like your emotions can blow that electricity complete out of the water. And so then there's a higher level we still have to address, and that's emotions. You know, so and then just in general, we were having a conversation with multiple people over the last couple of weeks, and I was like, we're getting deep into that emotional conversation. You're like, you know, the responses that your nervous system has to an emotion or to what someone does or says to you, that like, what, you know, in society, we're really, you know, we're pretty negative, and we're always looking for, you know, to be a victim or something negative. And we're not looking for enough positive. And it's like, what if, you know, we just tried to adopt a philosophy of like, every time I go to engage someone, I'm just going to do or say something positive versus negative. And then what kind of compounding effect that could have on, you know, whether it's performance, health, whatever, mental issues like depression and stuff like that. I mean, that's like, again, I look at it more of like, what can we all do to help each other and help ourselves, than go to like, hey, let's go to this practitioner who is like God and he knows everything and he can fix you. So those are things that like I really, especially in like strength athletics and like strength and conditioning, like, you know, getting more in touch with your emotions. but really, like, you know, there's a reason for them. Well, I mean, like if you look at any population of individual that has a whole lot of emotional stress on them, I mean, a Division I athlete, like that's got to be at the top.
Most
besides
definitely.
being in business, like you're, you know, so. And honestly, like when I was at Mizzou, that was another thing they talked about. Is like, honestly, we feel like we have concussions down. It's the mental, it's the emotional stuff that we don't know how to handle. You know, so I think it's there. It's just, you know, like I said, I think more and more is going to be coming out about that. But like I think that's a big thing to pay attention to, and to, you know, be a better leader, be a better, you know, strength coach, be a better, you know, practitioner for me. Like addressing the emotions and kind of playing into that and how that affects people would be like a really good thing to start paying attention to.
No, I like it. And then kind of moving into this last segment, right? There's just some rapid fire questions, so you just give me like the first thought that comes in your head, and we'll just kind of keep rolling through it. All right. So what are some quotes that you live by?
I only really have one that I can think of. I wrote down, so working towards ultimate performance, pushing the envelope for competition purposes, or anything more than just basic health and fitness is an absolute luxury and most certainly not a right. Mistreating your body and ignoring concepts such as moving well outside the gym and the lifting platform can strip away this luxury very quickly. Ultimate performance is a lifetime commitment, 24/7.
I like it. Okay.
That's in Stuart McGill and Brian Carroll's new book, The Gift of Injury. It's a fantastic book. I definitely recommend it for anyone that hasn't read it or has read Stu's stuff and hasn't quite gotten their hands on that one.
I like it. Okay. What's the best advice you've ever been given?
You know, I actually learn more by watching or listening to other people and learning from their experiences. So I don't know about advice that I can say someone's actually verbally said to me, but you know, I think the biggest thing I can give for advice is like whatever it is you're doing now will decide what you're doing later. And just to delve into that a little bit, like Dave Tate had a really good metaphor of this concept with business, but it just kind of applies in life. And I feel like if I look back at what's happened in my life, like everything has to do with at some point in time, like I did something that affected me 5 years later, and I don't understand at that point what that actually did for me until that 5 years later, to where like there's opportunities and there's directions that you could go in your life that you don't understand what those decisions mean until way later on. So like always kind of know where your direction is. But he used it. He used it as like a medicine ball, throwing a medicine ball against the wall and expecting that medicine ball to come straight back, and then it doesn't. And so that's just not how the world works. It's actually something where you might be pounding your head against the wall for years, and then all of a sudden the work you've done and the time you put in, you know, comes back to you tenfold later on. So to me, that's like, that definitely resonates with my life and kind of where I've gone in my profession, that like 100%, man, like the stuff you're doing now, making the right decisions now and knowing what direction you want to head in, and then making decisions based off that direction that you want to head in. It's going to pay off if you're staying consistent and putting in the work. You just don't realize it yet.
Okay. What's the worst advice you've ever been given?
So the worst advice I've ever been given is, I was in a clinic and we had a strength athlete, or a high school athlete, that was doing a set of squats, and I saw some issues on him and I was trying to help correct it. And at the end of the day, I just knew he didn't have enough education. And this is when I was in Memphis, and I knew that, you know, MBS Fitness had like a squat, bench, deadlift seminar that they did a really good job of coaching and spending a lot of time training the athlete on how to squat correctly. Just like, hey man, you need to take that seminar. And like after I got done, the other doc in the office was like, you know, hey, like what you did there is really good. Like he's trying to like mentor me or something, like, you know, trying to tell me how I should think. And he was like, you know, you're doing really good. Like, but you know, don't ever tell someone that they should go anywhere else, you know, or that you're not as good at something, or that you're incompetent. Because what they'll think is, you know, you gotta make them know that you're the best at everything, you know. Because then, otherwise, if you don't, they're not gonna trust you. They're not gonna come back to you. They're gonna go to someone else. And it's just like, no, man. Like if I put them in the right place at the right time and put them in the hands they need to be in, they're gonna think even better of me, you know. So that don't try to be, you know, don't try to be the master of everything, especially if you know there's someone out there that can help a little better than you. Build that relationship and be able to work back and forth with that person.
I like that. Okay, what's one of the biggest struggles you've had to overcome?
You know, I think just the whole category of mental, you know, the mental struggle, because, and not in a sense of like I've dealt with depression and all that shit. I mean, maybe I have, I just don't realize it. But like, just in general, man, like your perception dictates everything. Like the way you react to and handle a situation like changes everything. And so the biggest struggle is like, just again with the way we are in society, but then just in general, your first initial thought process is like blame someone else or find someone else's fault. Like, and honestly, like it seems like I'm trying to plug them a whole shit ton, but like RPR, like that 1, 2, 3 concept, man, like, you know, you got to take care of number one. You got to take care of you got to take care of hip flexion. Otherwise, nothing else works correctly. So, like, trying to find, and especially with growing a new business, like, trying to find in every situation how I could have and how I probably did affect that situation for the better and worse, and taking care of that first. Like, that's been the biggest mental struggle. It's personal responsibility, personal, like, perception of how situations go, and like trying to flip that script and turn everything into a positive. Like that's definitely a tough one for sure.
Okay. And then you mentioned a little bit earlier, but you said Stuart McGill's book is pretty good, but what are some other resources that have had a big impact on you, whether it's a book, podcast, or like a seminar?
You know, I really think that, you know, again, I don't think a whole lot changes in time. So actually, I found like the books that helped me the most, or that I thought a lot about, that have like a lot of good information in them, are honestly some of the older type literature. You know, Think and Grow Rich, Looking Out for Number One, Winning Through Intimidation, like books that were written in like the 1920s, 1930s and stuff. Like, at some point, like it's just like strength training, man. The science doesn't really change a whole lot. Like you can learn so much by learning from stuff back then, the way they were, the way they interpreted stuff. Tony Robbins is really good too. Honestly, most of this is personal development.
Okay.
I think when you learn to be able to take care of yourself, like I said, like it impacts you in a really big way on how you approach life and how you like can basically manage how you navigate through life. So most of them are more through just personal betterment. So those would be the good ones, I would say. Tony Robbins' 6 Human Needs is pretty awesome too.
Okay.
That's the book, or the video recording or the audio recording, I would definitely say there.
Okay.
So
awesome.
Tons of podcasts though, not enough to just list them all off.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, and then the last question here. So what projects are you currently working on, and how can people kind of reach out to you and follow your journey?
Yeah, so right now a couple different projects. Like I said, we're like currently just trying to build relationships with high schools. It's just, that's my population. Those are the guys I get along with really well.
Yeah.
That's where I want to be, and who I want to help are those active-minded people, athletic populations, people that want to, get better. So we've been working a lot with them, but I think what I'm realizing is eventually in the future, what I'd like to get into is like actual consultation work for recovery. So going into a high school or, a college or something like that. And, just like you have a nutritionist, right? Like just offloading like, hey, maybe it's too much for me as a strength coach to take care of nutrition, even though I value it and I know it needs to happen. So I get a nutritionist. Same thing with recovery. Like, hey, we bring in a guy that literally goes, let me see your program. We're going to go through together, and I'm going to like program in how you're going to add more recovery into your workload or, whatever it might be. High schools, I think that's a huge deal because it's just going to help build better athletes.
Yeah.
The other thing is like in general, like my mindset, especially in Columbus, is like there's a lot of good people in Columbus and a lot of good businesses. So, with 1 million people that are in our area, within the neighboring counties and suburbs of Columbus, like I want to push forward and start building relationships with local professionals here and like find people that are like-minded that are doing the same things that we are and like basically put together a collaborative of healthcare professionals, strength coaches, athletic trainers, like just to kind of showcase the mentality and become a trusted network for people to be able to get information from and then help solve their problems. Like I think that'd be a huge a huge thing to develop, whether it's a podcast or whether it's just local seminars or doing seminars abroad or anywhere else outside the state or inside the state. I think eventually we realistically looking at, if I'm worried about competing directly with another chiropractor or another physical therapist when we have got 1 million people that we can help out, like the question should be, how can we get more people doing the right things than how can I take the people who are already doing the right things from someone else, so I more want to work with individuals. But so I mean, like we have our website for the practice is hybrid-performance.net. So we're going to continue to try to build that site to put more content on there. I don't do a whole lot of social media posting, but like by all means, it's an easy way to get a hold of me. That's how you got a hold of me. So it's Dr. Tyrel Detweiler on Instagram, Tyrel Detweiler on Facebook. I definitely recommend checking out the RPR website. I write articles pretty consistently on Elite FTS, so you can probably catch me on there as well. And by any means, if someone wants to reach out and email me, it's just pretty easy. It's Dr. Detweiler at hybrid-performance.net, DETWEILER. So yeah, I mean, I'm usually an open book. If I've got time, I definitely want to help others and help answer questions. So that's kind of how you can keep up. And if you need anything, let me know. I'd be more than happy to help out.
Awesome. Well, Tyrel, thank you so much for your time. This was huge for me. A lot of really cool things, a lot of really cool topics, and I think a lot of stuff that people can dive into deeper. So once again, I appreciate your time, and I look forward to connecting with you in the future.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Thanks again for joining me, and if you enjoyed the episode, please go ahead and give me a 5-star review on iTunes. I really appreciate those of you that have taken the time out to do so thus far. Or you can also support the show by going ahead and writing a review, which will help others like you find this episode. Next week we'll have another exciting guest. But until then, this is the Gamut of Performance Podcast.